At least it is true that man has no control, even over his own will.
Alright, so, what is Berserk? First and foremost, massive spoilers ahead for the Berserk Golden Age arc and some tangential information. Berserk is a medieval fantasy manga, first published in 1990 and later adapted to several different media, most famously into a 1997 anime series. Key features of Berserk include realistic political jockeying and Tudor-esque nobleman drama. The most horrific, violent acts I have ever seen depicted on screen or the page. This universe's version of hell and other fun places. Straight up demons. A guy with huge arms and a huge hot sword.
Huh? A great weapon. A bit much for me, though.
A guy with flowing white hair and a hot small sword. A love triangle between a guy with huge arms and a huge sword, a guy with flowing white hair and a small sword, and a woman named after a membership warehouse club.
Look at the size of that sword! Does that runt actually think he's gonna swing that thing around? It's just for looks.
All of that being said, I don't think it would be hyperbole to claim that Berserk is one of the most well-crafted stories and universes ever conceived, and that extends to the characters as well. While Guts is our protagonist and resident struggler, the story could not exist without his enemy to lover, back to enemy, Griffith. Griffith. Wings of Darkness. Femto. The White Falcon. The Falcon of Light. The Falcon of Darkness. The Absolute. And the Blessed King of Longing. The poster that hangs above my bed so I can dream sweet little dreams every night. Griffith. He is introduced in our story as the leader of the Band of the Hawk, or Falcon depending on your preferred translation. A group of mercenaries battling to make a name for themselves. His men, and Casca, are fiercely loyal, and as the story progresses, it is shown that Griffith's dream has been adopted by his band of mercenaries. They are loyal to him, and he is all focused on his end goal, to become the ruler of a new, golden kingdom. While Griffith achieves the core goal of his dream, it comes at an unimaginable cost. As this series will illustrate, Griffith's dreams are achieved and perhaps even exceeded through cold, calculated maneuvering, grievous errors made in the heat of emotion, and a fate that he may never have been able to escape. What are the 48 Laws of Power? Robert Greene, noted sick-as-hell half-goatee haver, bounced around from job to job after majoring in classical studies at Cal Berkeley and the University of Wisconsin. Eventually, Greene settled on writing and editing as his vocation. Given his background in classical studies and his brushing shoulders with powerful people from a myriad of industries and walks of life, he developed the idea for what would later become the 48 Laws of Power. The book uses wisdom and tactics from powerful people throughout recent and distant history, including Queen Elizabeth I, Henry Kissinger, and Sun Tzu. Most notably and perhaps notoriously, the laws draw from the writings and life of Niccolo Machiavelli, himself known for drafting The Prince. Machiavelli's moniker has lent itself to being ruthless, conniving, cold, and using supposed evil tactics to gain power in an attempt to create a better world, all of which is now commonly referred to as Machiavellian. The 48 Laws of Power has been described as a modern retelling of The Prince, a guide to achieving, maintaining, and best utilizing power. Much like Machiavelli, Greene offers no promise of moral righteousness or virtue, only results. So what are we doing here? I am here today, talking in the background while you eat lunch, vacuum, walk, or try to fall asleep, to explore whether Griffith from Berserk read Robert Greene's seminal work, The 48 Laws of Power. I am hypothesizing that Griffith, sexually beguiling though he may be, is not only familiar with, but is actively using the lessons learned from the 48 Laws of Power to achieve his ultimate dream of being the ruler of a golden, prosperous kingdom. To simplify what would otherwise be an even more daunting task, we will stick primarily to the events of the Golden Age arc. Not only is this the most famous and character-defining arc for Griffith, but it is also the focal point of the most well-known anime adaptation, that being Berserk 1997. In my opinion, when Griffith follows the laws, he finds success and his power grows. These are moments when he is cold, calculating, and unfeeling. When Griffith ignores the laws, he finds failure and his dreams take a step back. These are moments when he is jealous, vindictive, and petty. And yes, I almost read that as pretty. Even when he betrays his better judgment, Griffith's actions show that he is intimately familiar with the laws and uses them as strategic points to further his goals. The other thing about Berserk and the 48 Laws of Power is the dichotomy between the self-seriousness of each and how fucking goofy they both can be, both within themselves and due to the communities that follow them. For Berserk, the meme community is so good that it comes close to ruining a classic story about love, life, death, suffering, fate, humanity, and ultimately gay interracial couples in a feudal fantasy world. But ruin it, the meme community does not. For the 48 Laws of Power, the community either sees the book as some kind of forbidden knowledge passed on by secret societies. It isn't. Or as something that will make them unlock the secrets of becoming Gordon Gekko or something. It won't. We will explore, law by law, whether or not Griffith read Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power. And no, we will not be taking that seriously.
It keeps on growing. Have you read them all?
Yes, almost. When you find yourself in charge of so much, you must do more than battle. Well, I really just read them out of mere curiosity. History, religion, philosophy, chemistry, tactics. There's even a book on applying makeup, and a book on cooking. There are so many of them.
The 48 Laws of Power? What is this? Law 1. Never outshine the master. Always make those above you feel comfortably superior. In your desire to please or impress them, do not go too far in displaying your talents, or you might accomplish the opposite. Inspire fear and insecurity. Make your masters appear more brilliant than they are, and you will attain the height of power. Pride, fear, comfort, insecurity, placation. In the world of Berserk, the concept of a master is more concrete than it is in our modern world. There are royals, nobles, military ranks, and a feudal caste system that impacts the lives of all our characters. Griffith was born a commoner who often lacked the money to eat. He grew up a master of none. As he gazed longingly at the castle on the hill, he dreamt of someday being a master to all. On his path to achieving his golden kingdom, paved with the souls and mangled bodies of friends and enemies alike, Griffith was master and servant to many along the way. Unsurprisingly, the endlessly prideful and confident Griffith struggles to stay cold and calculated when it comes to bending the knee. To Griffith, the balance between his destiny to become the ruler of a grand kingdom and his tactics in using those around him to meet his final goal create mixed results when it comes to never outshining his master. When we are introduced to Griffith, he is already a man of relative power. The Band of the Hawk speaks of him almost as though he were a god, a mythical being who commands complete respect and can do no wrong. They speak of him with both love and reverence. Griffith himself does not fight this notion, instead feeding into it at every turn. All of this to say that when we meet Griffith in the Golden Age arc, he is a man with no master. Yet he understands that for all of his localized power within the Band of the Hawk, there are many remaining rungs on the ladder he hopes to ascend. As the band's fame grows, they become more integral to the Midland Army and its ruling class. As Griffith's fame grows, he makes the leap from a big fish in a small pond to a small fish in the royal court. He is invited to participate in court meetings. Over time, he is held in equal esteem to the nation's generals, but is not without consternation. During these meetings, parties, and other social gatherings, generals become increasingly outspoken against Griffith, betraying an undercurrent of jealousy and an overt offense to a commoner being held in high regard. As a response, Griffith remains stoic. He continues to stand up for himself and the Hawks, but he does not outstep his rank. He never challenges any of the generals outright and never questions the authority of the king. Instead, he pledges his humble allegiance and continues to win battles. Most of all, he credits his victories, at least publicly, to the nation of Midland and Midland's king. Griffith is always careful to make sure his master feels that he was the brilliant one to select the Hawks, that the king deserves the glory for the Hawks' victories. Over time, these concessions and adherence to the first law of power leads Griffith to the highest rank in the Midland Army. Griffith demonstrates a cold understanding of and adherence to the first law of power: never outshine the master. We know this is a calculated choice because elsewhere, he speaks of himself as destined to be the ruler of the world, a singular entity to guide humanity out of what he perceives to be a dark and pointless existence. Griffith views those around him as beneath him, but he uses his knowledge of the 48 laws to overcome his hubris and attempt to not outshine his masters, with mixed results. One of the aspects of the first law of power that Green warns us about is that some of us will naturally outshine our masters, whether or not that is our intention. Griffith, with his milky white skin, dulcet tones, and presumably very strong though tiny hands, naturally outshines the high-ranking members of the Midland Army immediately upon his arrival in court. While he attempts to remain humble and blend in, it is not enough to avoid sparking fear and insecurity in his supposed comrades. Julius, brother to the King of Midland and a high-ranking general, develops a deep loathing of Griffith. Not only because he holds the intrinsic belief that common-born men can never become nobles or military officials, but also because Griffith's affection toward Julius's niece, Charlotte, offend the nobleman. As Griffith's star rises and Julius loses favor by comparison, the Band of the Hawk is given the honor of being the king's security detail during the annual hunt, an honor previously reserved for Julius's White Dragon Knights. With this final offense against his pride, Julius plots with Dr. Eggman to assassinate Griffith. The assassin's poisoned arrow strikes Griffith squarely in the chest. This would almost certainly have killed him, were it not for the existence of the Crimson Baelet, the egg of the king. Implied destiny and greater powers at play aside, Griffith is lucky to walk away alive after transgressing the first law. Later in the story, Griffith's courtship of the king's daughter, Charlotte, shows us another example of Griffith transgressing the first law of power. Griffith shares his vision for a new world with Charlotte, who finds him irresistibly charming and handsome. They continue their relationship innocently for the following months. As Griffith prepares to leave for a critical battle in the 100 Years' War, Charlotte intercepts him. She gives Griffith a parting gift, half of a necklace, of which she is the owner of the other half. This romantic gesture is noticed by both Casca and Charlotte's stepmother, the Queen of Midland. After Griffith departs, the Queen chides Charlotte for associating with a man of common birth. This perceived transgression against her family's honor leads the Queen to, once again, conspire with other high-ranking members of the Midland court to assassinate Griffith. Our white-haired angel flew too close to the sun, outshining the other generals, nobles, and even the son of Julius, Adonis, who was a likely candidate to one day marry the princess. Unlike his earlier transgressions being a natural result of Griffith's androgynous and sexually confusing good looks, blending the feminine softness and warmth of a young woman with the distant, unwavering confidence of a man with significantly more body hair, and his armor that looks kind of like a beak, but like in a cool way that isn't lame or trying too hard or anything, you know? Anyways, unlike those other times, his courtship of Charlotte is a conscious choice. This is one strike against the claim that Griffith is an adherent of the 48 Laws. Griffith sniffs out the evil plot of Dr. Eggman and roasts the conspirators alive, but his lashing out does not end there. Partially as a grasp for power and partially distraught over his boyfriend Guts leaving the Band of the Hawk, Griffith sneaks into Charlotte's room at night and beds her out of wedlock. Of all of his previous transgressions, this is the most overtly prideful and ill-advised. Griffith knows that Charlotte is desperate for him, as are all men, women, and Casca. He seduces her not for his own lust for Charlotte, nor his lust for power, but out of wounded pride. It is Guts who Griffith thinks about when he decides to enter Charlotte's chamber, and it is Guts on his mind after the questionably aged coitus. Griffith outshines many masters at this moment. Adonis and Julius, posthumously at this point, the other nobles, and most importantly, the king. By overstepping his class and his rank using his natural charisma and military power, he shatters the first law and triggers the events that would lead to his imprisonment and torture. Speaking of Griffith's boyfriend Guts, Griffith is not just a servant, but also a master. In particular, he is a master to Guts, the Black Swordsman, the 100-Man Slayer, the Struggler, and one of only a handful of cartoon renderings of men to make me question my sexuality. It just so happens to be a coincidence that Griffith is another such case, but I digress. The theme of Guts and Griffith's friendship primarily hinges on a single thought, that Guts needs to become his own man with his own defined dream to become Griffith's equal, and thus achieve the status to become Griffith's true friend. Griffith himself states that for him to consider a man a true friend, that man must have his own, independent dream, a dream worth fighting for. When Guts experiences character growth, maturity, and development enough to strike out and seek his own dream, Griffith throws a hissy fit. It is his reaction that leads to the events described in the previous section, and ultimately Griffith's downfall before his rebirth into Femto. As it pertains to the first law of power, this is a role reversal. It is Guts outshining his master, Griffith. Guts not only seeks and achieves his independence, but he also defeats Griffith in a duel. This duel, and the friction between our two hunks, is also a microcosm of the other symbolistic message of the story. Fate versus free will. Ambition versus compassion. Idealism versus pragmatism. Guts' defeat of Griffith exposes a doubt in Griffith, a doubt that he would have to live with for the long and unimaginable torture he would soon endure. While Griffith himself does not obey or transgress the law in this example, he recognizes and rages against its violation.